Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Benjamin, and today I want to talk a little bit about the Senate elections. Now, I know I wasn't here last week. I wanted to wait until after some events from late last week before I actually made a video because I wanted to see how Herschel Walker would do in his debate down in Georgia. And I think I had some decently high expectations for him because I know he's not, 100% an idiot. And I figured, okay, I guarantee you he's training with experienced campaign team and is probably getting advice from Mitch McConnell and other people in the Republican Senate campaign committee. And that probably includes doing mock debates. And it turns out that I was right that he was getting all of that help. And it turns out that, hey, Herschel Walker is extremely well coached. In all seriousness, I think Herschel Walker definitely did a lot to show that he's capable of actually performing at a level that you would expect a senator to perform at. And it does help him a little bit that Raphael Warnock definitely underperformed. He didn't pull, he pulled a lot of punches that I don't think he should have, honestly. Herschel Walker hammered on and on. Like, Herschel Walker was the one who was on the attack rather than Warnock, who appeared a lot more defensive. And this is kind of refreshing, to be honest. But Herschel Walker actually answered questions that he was asked during the debate, which I'm not sure if anybody who follows my channel actually pays attention to debates in politics, but it's very rare. It is very rare that a candidate actually answers questions that are posed to them. So, yeah. So right now I'm keeping it as Tilt Walker. And I know a lot of people are going to bring up, well, look at the polls. Raphael Warnock's ahead by about, the RCP average right now? Like 3 points-ish? Maybe around 2? And I get that argument. But then you flip over and look at the gubernatorial election in Georgia, and Brian Kemp is just crushing Stacey Abrams. It's like 52-46 in the RCP average. That's a 6-point advantage. Now, I'm going to explain something about the Deep South that I don't think a lot of people understand, is that voting is extremely polarized there. And you're going to say, well, it's polarized everywhere. But the polarization in Georgia is very specific. And this is true of much of the Deep South. So pretty much North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, into Kentucky, Missouri. You can even push this into Oklahoma and Texas. But on the fringes of the South, things start changing a little bit. And that's why I'm not including Florida. Because, yeah, Florida's a southern state. But you've also got a ton of different influences. You've got, the Hispanic influences throughout the state, Puerto Ricanos, Venezuelans, Cubanos, etc. And it's such a unique culture. Florida's kind of the oddball out here, okay? Virginia, same thing. It's kind of the another oddball out, but that's just because of Northern Virginia becoming more and more preeminent in the Commonwealth. North Carolina could very well fit into South. Texas is just Texas. Okay, it's its own thing. But in the Deep South, the polarization is typically along racial lines, where you can reasonably expect about 75 to even 80% of white voters are going to vote for the Republican pretty much regardless of what happens. And 90 to 95, maybe even more, of black voters are usually going to vote for a Democrat. And truly only about 3 to 7% of the electorate is truly up for grabs in southern states. And even then, so southern states, regardless of the election, usually track pretty darn close to the partisanship. And the national environment matters a lot less. You know, we're talking for a similar for a point shift in the national environment, a southern state may shift 0.5% in that direction. It just doesn't really register. So basing that, right now we've got about an R+3 environment if we believe the polls. And I reasonably do, okay? That said, the momentum is definitely in Republicans' corner, and kind of what I said, if you actually look at the RCP average, it went from kind of a toss-up to where Dems maybe had a point and a half. Now we're at an R+3 and growing. This is really bad news for the Democrats. It's basically saying, yeah, the national environment never really changed. Whatever you want to explain this recent shift back towards the Republicans, you can use, okay? I don't really care. There's a few things it could be. It's irrelevant right now. The reality is the environment is looking like it's really good for a Republican Party, okay? And Georgia is about, I'd say, an R+4 state in 2022. So using that, we're talking about an R+6, R+6.5 edge for just your generic Republican candidate. But then again, even a really good Republican candidate or a bad Republican candidate should still be performing that because of how unique the dynamics of the South are when it comes to elections. Brian Kemp's about where you would expect with that R+6 advantage. Add a 1.5 to R+4 and you're at an R5.5. So he's kind of beating expectations a little bit, okay? What I would call the baseline. Then why is Herschel Walker underperforming the national environment as well as the state's partisanship? You know, why is he underperforming that by close to 9%? I understand the candidate quality argument. I don't think the candidate quality argument is good enough to make up for that. Even if you throw in the scandal argument, I don't think it's good enough for that. It could explain maybe 2 or 3 points of underperformance, maybe even 4. But 9? I think something's amiss here. It doesn't make sense. And given how little split ticketing there is, particularly in the South, this is giving me a lot of pause to say, yeah, I'm going to flip my prognostication. Listen, if Warnock winds up winning, I'll happily admit that I was wrong and that Herschel Walker was maybe just a really bad candidate, like apocalyptically bad, because that's what it would require. And I just don't see that. I just don't see it. It's very probable that this election, by the way, the Senate election, goes to a runoff on December 6th. So we'll see what happens there. But for right now, I do have Republicans flipping Georgia and Herschel Walker becoming a senator. And Pennsylvania keeps inching closer and closer. This is the closest the polling average has ever been in Pennsylvania. And we're about to see Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz, and John Fetterman debate pretty soon. That'll be interesting to see. And I think I'll be interested to see what happens, okay? If Fetterman has kind of lowered expectations, I think, because of the stroke. Just like a lot of people said Walker had lowered expectations because he was deliberately lowering them. But by the way, I think Herschel Walker won that debate comfortably, too. But if Fetterman underperforms those lowered expectations, which I honestly believe he very well could, just because of the nature of having a stroke and what that actually means to a person and to a person's psyche. We'll see what happens, obviously. It could really provide a boost to Dr. Oz, because those undecided voters are going to say, yeah, okay, maybe we shouldn't have a somebody who's recovering from a stroke in the Senate for us. What if they have another and we have to do this thing all over again? Yeah, I'll take we can vote this guy out in 6 years. It's that simple. A lot of people will maybe make that calculus, where they can say, let's wait for somebody who's a better candidate, even if I don't like this person. And hey, maybe he performs well in the Senate. In which case, guess what? Wasn't a bad choice then. In Ohio, J.D. Vance holds a narrow but reasonable lead. It's one of those where, hey, again, there's a really weird distance between the gubernatorial election and the Senate election. Now, the Rust Belt does have more swing voters than the South. So, a little bit more split ticketing I can see. And yeah, J.D. Vance is probably not as good a candidate as he should be. And Tim Ryan's an extremely good candidate for Ohio. But then again, it's really, really difficult when you're seeing all this variation. Wisconsin is one of the more normally polled races that I can see, because both the gubernatorial and Senate elections appear to be close to the same in terms of margin and polling averages. And, well, Ron Johnson is appearing to start running away with it. Really bad for Mandela Barnes, and kind of bad for the Democrats, because that was viewed as a potential Democratic pickup opportunity. North Carolina, I don't see Beasley challenging Bud. Colorado could get interesting with O'Day. I think he's got the right endorsements to be competitive as a Republican in Colorado. And that includes Virginia's Governor Glenn Youngkin, who has campaigned for him. Greg Abbott from Texas. George Bush from Texas, former president. You know, these are the types of Republicans you want campaigning for you in Colorado. I don't think O'Day would even accept Trump's assistance. And I think actually it helps him with independence in Colorado that Trump has actually attacked O'Day. So that's, and polling is showing it's not really competitive, but it's close enough that a surprise could happen. Arizona, I don't think Blake Masters is going to pull it off. I don't see it. Even with Kerry Lake probably going to win the governor's race. Nevada, Laxalt is just looking really strong right now, and the polling average seems to indicate he'll flip it. Whether or not that happens, we'll see. Washington, I'm growing more and more confident that Patty Murray's going to win that, but Smiley could also do better than expected here. We'll see. For right now, I have Republicans winning 51 seats and taking control of the Senate, with the Democrats at 49 seats. It's really that simple. And I'll come back, and probably this weekend we'll go over the governor's races, and I'm going to start really gearing up towards releasing my final absolute prediction for the Monday before Election Day. And my hope is that I can actually stream some election night coverage, but given my internet, it might not happen. Anyway, take it easy, everyone. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.